it's me, Michelle, and I wanted to welcome you to 15 minutes of Unpacking Our Grief, Part 5. I think this will be the last part of this first series of Unpacking Our Grief because I want to end with self-compassion, and hopefully I'll talk to you at the end of this session about another way that hopefully I can offer support to you on your grief journey. So 15 minutes of Unpacking Our Grief. Like I said, this is the 5th conversation, and that's what it is. It's just a conversation of me being real about my grief experience, how I'm coping, how I'm healing. I've decided this time around I'm going to be very intentional about my healing in my grief because I've been on the other side of it where I wasn't very healthy and intentional about my healing, and it manifested itself in my life in a very dysfunctional way. So I think it's very important that we are intentional about our healing, and especially on the front end, I think that it will serve us well as we process through our grief. You hear me say journey all the time because I don't think that, I know that it's not a destination that we'll arrive at. There won't be a day where we wake up and we don't miss our loved one. There won't be a day where we won't all of a sudden stop thinking about them because they're gone. There won't be days where we'll not cry, and there won't be holidays or birthdays that we'll really remember them and miss them. There will be days like that. All through our journey. So I don't think that there will be a destination that we'll arrive at where we'll stop missing them and we'll stop crying about losing them. But I do think that we can be healthy in it. And I really do. I'm sincere when I say this. I really do believe that grief, our suffering, can be empowering. That's a hard word to say. Empowering for us in our future. I think that grief can play, how we process through grief can play an important role in our destiny. And if you had a chance to watch part 4, which is kind of a lead into this, I talked about regrets and how we can process and deal with regrets. And one of the things I said is, our loved ones wouldn't want to think that anything that happened to them or anything that we went through with them or that their death negatively impacted our lives going forward. They would want to think that we weren't able to heal and to have a good life after they're gone. I mean, their desire for us, and in fact, my husband even told me this. He said, Michelle, go on and have a good life. And I think that that's what all of our loved ones would want for us. So I just kind of want you to remember that, because self-compassion is very important on our grief journey. One of the last conferences that Stephen and I attended was the North Carolina Rehabilitation Association conference. We had the honor of being presenters at that conference, and we shared about compassion. And at the end, we shared about self-compassion. And the reason why we wanted to include self-compassion in it because as in the rehabilitation environment, we work with people with disabilities, and it's just one of those professions where you're always in a supportive role. You're always supporting others. And some of us have those roles in our everyday lives, but particularly if you have it in your everyday life and you have it in your vocation, it's very important that that compassion that you are offering to others, that you then offer it to yourselves, because it's important that we stay healthy in our journey. So that self-compassion, that self-care, I think is important to us. So that's kind of what I wanted to share with you today. I want you to think about a time when you've supported a friend or a family member for anything, where you've walked with them through maybe something difficult in their lives. And I wanted you to think about the kind of friend or loved one that you were to them. How did you console them? How did you come alongside them? How did you support them? What were some of the encouraging words and things that you did for them? And then I want to think about how you then can turn that around on yourself. How can you offer yourself that same compassion and that same love and concern that you offer to others? I think we tend to beat up on ourselves a lot in grief. I think, you know, we have these expectations that we should handle it a certain way, or that we should arrive at a certain point. And it's just that's all in our heads. I know with me, in my personality, kind of just a strong person, and think I can handle a lot of things at one time. And I tend to really have some high expectations of myself. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But there's something wrong with it when we don't allow ourselves to make mistakes, or allow ourselves the grace and the space to not get it right. And I think in one of my blogs, actually, that I wrote, one of my blogs about grief that I wrote was, and I think I titled it, I Don't Have to Have It Together All the Time. And I share in that how one of the biggest lessons I've learned in my life, particularly after going through a fresh grief experience, is that I don't have to have it together all the time. Even if I'm the kind of person that likes to have it together all the time, I don't have to have it together all the time. I can say that I'm weak, and that I'm tired, and that I need help and I need support. And it's okay for me to reach out, and it's okay for me to ask for help. A lot of times when we're helpers, it's hard for us to ask for help for ourselves. But in self-compassion, I think we have to do that. We have to learn how to ask for help, and to give ourselves permission to be weak and to not have it together. I know in my journey with Stephen and caregiving, I mean, there were days where he would just say, honey, go take a break. And it was probably because I wasn't showing up as my best self. You know, he could probably see the fatigue, or the emotional exhaustion. And so he would just say, honey, go take a break. I'm going to be all right, you know. And we also enlisted our friends and family. I mean, my family, man, they were so supportive, and they wanted to help. And you'd be surprised at the people that really want to help and want to be there for you. But we've got to allow them to be there for us. So offer yourself some help. Offer yourself the space to ask for some help. Offer yourself the grace to mess up, to have a bad day, to not always have it together all the time. That's offering yourself self-compassion. Another way that we can offer ourselves compassion is to forgive ourselves. And I know after my mother passed, I just had so many issues about forgiving myself for not being there like I felt I should have been. And I remember my therapist just saying, you know, well, think about your mother. You know, if you were to tell your mother, if you had a chance to talk to your mother and just apologize, what would your mother say to you? And I thought about it. I mean, my mom, she loved her children. Anybody knows she loved her children. And I know my mother would have just said, honey, I forgive you. Please do not carry this burden any longer. And I think for all of our loved ones, I know for Stephen, I know he would not want, and I said this in session 4, he would not want anything that he went through, or that we went through together, to negatively impact how I'm dealing with my life now. And I think that that's important for us to remember, and that we can offer ourselves that compassion and that forgiveness. Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. Yeah, you might not have gotten it right all the time. You might have messed up really badly in your life. You may have felt like you disappointed your loved one that's no longer with you. Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. They would want you to, and I want you to. And I know by me forgiving myself, it has really helped me in my healing on this journey. So I'm hoping that you will be able to forgive yourself. The other thing that I think we need to do is just to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, that we treat ourselves. I mean, spoil yourself a little. Stephen spoiled me a lot. My mama spoiled all of us. So, hey, he's not around to spoil me any longer, but I know he would want me to spoil myself. And so it's okay to treat yourself. And in a special way. Go get a massage. Well, now it's hard to go get a massage, so I'll take that back. One of my interns the other day sent me a Starbucks card because she knows I love coffee. So treat yourself to something that you love, okay? Something special that would just put a smile on your face. Because I was definitely going through the drive-through that afternoon to get my coffee. Actually, I got a Frappuccino because that was a way of me treating myself. I know when Stephen and I were dealing with his cancer, and we were dealing with it. I mean, my family members, they were just they just were so good to us. I mean, they took care of all of our needs. I mean, I would get sometimes they would just send me funds to just say treat yourself. So I think that we can do that for ourselves. And I think with self-care, sometimes you just got to treat yourself. So don't feel guilty about that. I know it feels indulgent. I know it feels selfish, but it's okay. You go ahead and treat yourself and indulge yourself, because it is a way of refreshing your soul, and it's a way of replenishing your energy, and I think that's important. One of the things, the other day I packed the dogs up. One of the things that Steve and I like to do is go sit by the lake, and we take our little basket of food, and we just hang out. And so I packed the dogs up. I packed them a lunch. I packed me a lunch, and we went and sat by the lake. And I mean, I just sat there, played some music in the car, and stared at the lake, and it did me the world of good. It put my mind in a better headspace. And so you do that. I go sit on the deck sometimes. It's something about nature, you know. I know you've heard this. It's something about nature that's very healing. I'll just sit on the deck. I put my music. I love Perrier sparkling water. I have my sparkling water out there, and I put on music, and I'll just sit back, and I'll rock, and I'll look at the sky and the trees, and I'll listen to the birds. And it is just so healing. But in that moment, I'm offering myself that self-compassion to do whatever it takes to be able to get through that day. And I think that that's important for us on our healing journey. And I'm hoping that you will do that for yourself. So what are some ways that you offer yourself compassion? Put it in the comments. I'm going to post this on Facebook. Put it in the comments so others can read it, if you will. And also, I just wanted to close out this session talking to you about another way that I hope that these conversations can be supported to you. As I said, this will be the last part of this particular series. But I am going to start what I call Grief Talk, Grief Talk with Michele, and it's going to be via Zoom. And it'll be, our first one will be Saturday morning at 9 o'clock on June 20th. June 20th, Saturday morning at 9 o'clock. I will have 3 other conversationalists, that's what I'm calling us, that would just be real about their grief journey, how they're processing through, how they're healing. And I'm hoping that it will be beneficial to you to help you through your grief journey. And so I hope you'll tune in, and especially, even if you're not freshly dealing with grief, that I hope you'll pass it on to those that may benefit, or if you're walking with someone through grief, it will still be very beneficial for you. I know there's a lot of grief out there right now with COVID, with Black Lives